Welcome to week 6 of We Are the Church. Now let's act like it, and we're going to be talking about acting with courage.
That sounds good to me.
Where we left off last week, Paul was making his trip back to Jerusalem after his missionary journey 2 and 3. As he went and was planting churches, he says farewell to all of the leadership in Ephesus, which was one of the churches that meant a lot to him. And then he makes his way back to Jerusalem. People try to stop him, but he is dead set on going back to Jerusalem.
He's taking this whole message back to Jerusalem. He's going back to make nice with all of the people that think he's horrible.
Right, and as the head of the church is in Jerusalem, he goes back and he introduces himself once again to the elders, and they have a conversation. And because he spent so much time in the Gentile world, being a Jew, he goes, I need to purify myself. And so that's exactly what he does right after meeting with the elders.
Right. Not only are the people who are followers of Jesus mad at him, but also the regular Jews as well. And so he tries to appease them as best he can by making sure that he does his Nazirite vow, shaving his head and all kinds of other things that go into that.
Taking a bath, which is something that, my kids only believe they have to do once a month or so.
Right. So he goes back to the temple and he's spotted there, and people say, look, it's that guy! Go get him! And so there's a riot that starts when Paul arrives there.
And they want to kill him, which is not abnormal for Paul.
No.
This is not the first time people have tried to kill him for what he was preaching. But it actually says that the guards rush in and they mistake him for somebody else. They think he's this Egyptian who is starting a revolt. So they start questioning him, going, do you even speak Greek, bro?
It's not the Hebrew soldiers, the temple guard, that are the ones who rush in. It's the Roman soldiers that are garrisoned next door. And when you have a riot, those are the guys you want to call.
Right. As the Romans are always trying to keep this province under control, because every single time a big revolt breaks out, it looks bad on them, because then Caesar hears about it and goes, can't you guys govern? I hired you to take care of this place. You should be able to keep it in order. And so as soon as they hear a big riot break out, they're the first ones through the door. They grab Paul and they start questioning him immediately. And then they find out, oh, well, this isn't even the guy we thought it was. Let's figure out who he is. And so they begin the questioning. And that's when Paul says, well, if you give me a moment, I'll talk to the crowd and I'll try to calm them down a little bit.
Probably not what Paul's real goal is. He wants to tell everybody about Jesus and what he was doing and why it's okay that he's doing this. But it turns out nobody really wants to hear him.
So he addresses the entire group of people that are angry, furious with him, and he does it in Hebrew, and that gets their attention because they think he's just a ne'er-do-well. I'm sure some people recognized him, but then there's just the crowd that follows the people that are like, we get to beat somebody up today. So they
general riots stuff.
Right. He addresses them and he shares his testimony. He talks about how he was on the road to Damascus and Jesus appeared to him and he was struck blind and he was prayed over by Ananias and regained his sight. And then he says, and God then sent me to the Gentiles. And that kind of brings you up to why he's back.
Right. This is the third time we have this story in the book of Acts. Luke includes it because it is part of his story. He has gone to share his story everywhere that he goes with courage.
And so as he addresses the crowd, when he finishes, so they're polite enough to let him finish, they start calling for his head. Away with this guy. Let's take him out. But that's when the Roman soldiers get the worst news they could possibly get.
Yeah, it turns out Paul is actually a Roman citizen by birth, which gives him a whole lot of leeway everywhere in the empire.
Yeah, so they cannot hold him without a charge. He has a right to that. He also has rights to appeal ultimately to Caesar if he feels like his case is being mishandled.
Which he will.
And it actually is very expensive to become a Roman citizen. One of the commanders goes, all right, how did you come up with enough money? Because I'm sure Paul doesn't look exactly like an aristocrat. He's just been traveling all over the empire. And they go, how did you come up with the money? He goes, well, I'm actually a citizen by birth, which is a bigger problem for them because that means he's got the pedigree.
He's got clout.
And now they got to take care of him.
Turns out very few people were actually citizens of the empire.
Well, at least that far out. Many of them in Rome were, but this far out, yeah, that's rare.
It is rare. And so most people they didn't have to treat with respect because they didn't actually have rights.
Yeah, you magically became human. You became a citizen of Rome.
Yeah. So where does this take Paul?
This takes Paul under the protection of the guard, and ultimately he's going to be taken to the governor Felix.
Right. He is saved by arrest. So I don't think he's that upset about it at this point. And next week we'll see what Paul decides he's going to do with this great gift he's been given, being arrested.
Yeah, ultimately it involves him then, being able to give his case before the Sanhedrin, in which they have this aggressive interchange, but the Roman soldiers are always there to protect him because of his citizenry. And then he'll be taken to Felix, and he will be given multiple opportunities to share who Jesus is before the governor and before a lot of politically important people.
So how are we supposed to share our faith with courage?
Many times I think that we're scared to step out and to say something that might be unpopular. I'm not saying, go on Facebook and try to rattle people's cages. I'm saying, to maybe stand up for somebody who's not being treated fair right in front of you. Or to say, this is not how we should be treating people. And Paul does that. He stands up, he's getting attacked. He's sharing his faith. I think we're called to share our faith in ways of action in our culture. And many times we don't want to do it.
Paul actually is very aggressive and kind of gets into, fisticuffs and a few other things. The way we talk about it is you should share your faith in a non-creepy way by using I statements. This is who I am. This is what I have discovered. This is my journey. And not telling people what they should do, but telling people what you did and what you received out of it. That way you can share your faith anywhere you go. As soon as you start making you statements, well, it gets offensive, and for all kinds of reasons. It is not imperative that we offend people for the sake of the gospel.
When we share our life with others, Jesus being the core of it, it's going to come up in conversation. And usually it will come up in a positive way when people start to ask you questions about why you are the way you are. And I think that that's one of the great ways in which we can share who Jesus is in our lives and with the people around us.
Yeah. Enjoy your conversation today as you talk about how to act with courage.